So when we talk about the carbon cycle, we're going to be looking at the actual atom or element carbon, and we're going to see how it moves naturally throughout the planet. Okay? We're going to see that there are some things that take in carbon, and there are some things that release carbon into the atmosphere. Because all this is linked back to yesterday's class on global warming and the greenhouse effect. Carbon dioxide is a major greenhouse gas, right? And that is making that increased amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is making the greenhouse effect more apparent, and it's causing global warming. So this is where we're coming from. A little bit of a refresher from yesterday. Now, on the screen we see there's a bunch of crudely drawn trees and shrubs and greenery. All plants on this planet have the ability to make their own food. They're autotrophs. Remember, we learned about that? Heterotrophs, you have to get your food from somewhere else. Autotrophs, you make your own food. And they make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So if I've got atmospheric carbon dioxide, if I've got CO2, okay, in the air, we're going to look at that and we're going to say, okay, CO2, here we go, we'll do you in black. There we go, CO2. Carbon dioxide is naturally in the atmosphere. There's a very small amount of it in the atmosphere, okay, and that's good. We don't want a lot of it because we don't want to turn into a Venus. Not that we ever will, because Venus's whole atmosphere is carbon dioxide, whereas ours it's less than 1%, which is not a lot. But even in the last 150 to 160 years, we have increased the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere by a very significant margin, to the point that we're starting to trap more heat than we used to. Okay? So, carbon dioxide in the air actually goes into, it actually goes into trees, and trees use it to make their own food. Trees actually, and you're going to follow the arrows here. So the CO2 goes into the actual leaves, and the leaves are going to use that and water and energy from the sun, and they're going to create sugar for the tree to eat. Okay? So in the springtime, if you've ever gone to a maple shack or you've gone to a sugar shack, the sap that's actually coming out of the tree that they're boiling down to make maple sugar and maple syrup, that's actually extra sugar that was stored in the roots of the tree over winter. Okay? So that's part of that photosynthesis that the tree does. Now, in the process of photosynthesis, which we are going to talk about in the next slide, oxygen is actually produced. Plants during the daytime do not need oxygen. They actually release it out into the air. So we're going to look at a different colored arrow here. And we're going to say that oxygen is released into the air. Okay? So we've got our O2. Who needs oxygen?
Humans.
Us, exactly. All animals on the planet need oxygen. And even plants need oxygen at night. Okay, plants actually use oxygen at night. Not during the day, but at night. Animals, all living animals, us included, use oxygen all the time. Okay, we need it. And you're actually going to learn about what we do with oxygen next year. Okay? Now, that oxygen ends up going into, we're following the arrows, but it ends up going into all the different organisms that are on the planet. So we'll draw them in, purple. So we've got people, my nice little people. We've got little people. We've got animals. Gonna draw That's a pig, in case you were wondering. Oops, whatever. Big with big ears. Okay? That's my pig. Now, all of these animals take in oxygen. We need it. What do we then spit out as a result? Every time we exhale, what are we exhaling?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide, okay? So let's go back here. We'll go, and then we'll sit here, and we'll follow the arrows. So this looks like a pretty nice cycle, right? There's a give, and there's a take. We give out CO2, plants take CO2 in. Plants give out oxygen, we take the oxygen in. It's actually a really good balance. And this kind of easy balance makes it so that there isn't actually an abundance or too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But nowadays, that's not the only thing. We living organisms are not the only thing dumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay? We have factories, automobiles, machinery, all kinds of things like that. So when we look at all of the things that humans have added to their environments, in terms of technologies that use fossil fuels, so gasoline, coal, oil. When you burn fossil fuels that are non-renewable, you're actually dumping more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Factories that burn this stuff for energy, more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay? So what is starting to happen here? What is starting to happen to the amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere?
It's increasing.
Oh boy, there's way more black arrows going into the air than arrows going into the trees, right? Okay, so that is one way that we are increasing greenhouse gases. We are adding more CO2 than plants can take up. But here's the deal. In some parts of the world, we're also doing this to our greenery. We're getting rid of a lot of greenery. So if there are less trees out there, not as many trees are taking in CO2. This is very, very prevalent or important, okay, and very... it's something that's happening in a great deal of places in and around the equator. Okay? Places that have trees that photosynthesize all year long. These trees outside do not photosynthesize all year long. They don't have leaves all year long. Okay? But trees that photosynthesize all year long, that get cut down, that's almost worse for the whole carbon cycle. Okay? Does that make sense? So to understand global warming and greenhouse gases, you need to understand the carbon cycle. And pre-industrial revolution, so 1850s or so, 1800s, it was a very even give and take, where trees would take in our carbon dioxide, living things would secrete carbon dioxide into the air. Okay, you give some carbon dioxide to the air, the trees take it. The trees give us oxygen, we take it. Okay? With the onset of just machinery and the burning of and the need for energy, we start to see more carbon dioxide, more methane being secreted or not secreted, but being pumped into the atmosphere. That means that our greenhouse gas layer is getting thicker. It traps more heat in. So yesterday you were sent some notes on the greenhouse effect. Okay, the notes we did in class. So that's what we're actually doing right now. And the importance of trees here is huge. Because without trees are the only trees and greenery, anything that has leaves and green in it, even plants, even decorative flowers. Okay, they have green leaves. Even those photosynthesize. Even those take in some CO2. So getting rid of trees on a global scale has global implications to greenhouse gas levels on our planet. What are some ways, let's brainstorm as a group, what are some ways that we can actually lower carbon dioxide levels, even minutely, in the atmosphere? Give me one way. We could use electrical cars. Yes, we could. Okay, so electric cars. What's another way?
Cutting down on the time it takes you to shower.
Okay, so, all right, smart water use. What else?
Planting more trees.
Oh, absolutely. Why? Give me something else. Cutting down our use of fossil fuels that are non-renewable. Absolutely. So for sure, eliminating our use of fossil fuels, gas, oil, coal, all kinds of things that you have to burn to get the energy. That's non-renewable and it produces carbon dioxide. But taking things like public transit, like the commuter trains or the metro or the bus, and leaving your car at home, or better yet, taking your bicycle, okay? Getting somewhere by bike or by scooter or by walking. Okay, these are all ways that we can actually lower our CO2 emissions. Okay? So, what is your understanding of the carbon cycle? Do you think you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.